All right, welcome Transfer community to another episode of the Transfer Nation video cast. I am so excited today to do a deep dive into curricular review with the one and only excellent, amazing, stellar Dr. Holly Herrera, who actually happens to have a birthday today. Woohoo! Happy birthday! Happy birthday!
It's my birthday. It's my favorite day. Yes.
Yay! Well, thank you for being with Transfer Nation on your favorite day, talking about your favorite topic.
Really? Yeah.
Transfer students, yes. Now, how you're known for the partnerships and the transfer inclusive and receptive communities and cultures that you build and relationships that you build to forge partnerships that really break down barriers for transfer students. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you work, and the framework that you view transfer through?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. So I am currently the Associate Provost for Transfer Initiatives and Academic Partnerships at Columbia College Chicago. I'm about to hit my 2-year anniversary. That'll be happening in August. But the title says it right there, right? Transfer Initiatives and Academic Partnerships. That's my jam. That's all I ever want to do and talk about. Before this, I was at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign for 14 years, where I got to work in admissions and at the college level and then at the campus level, all with a transfer focus, which was perfect for me because I was a transfer student myself. I actually spent 4 years at Parkland College in Champaign because I loved it so much. I wish I would have had someone who was like, hey, so this should be a 2-year program, not a 4-year program. But my advisor was so supportive of all of my interests. And in reality, what happened was I had a child my senior year of high school, and I started to notice he wasn't meeting developmental milestones. And I was pursuing a business degree at Parkland to transfer on to do that wherever it took me. And because of the flexibility of the community college curriculum, I could start taking courses in early childhood development to really figure out, okay, what does this look like? What should he be doing? And then take that information on somewhere else. So my experience at my 2-year institution changed my life. Andrew was able to get diagnosed properly and start getting treatment for that. It changed my whole trajectory. And that's kind of where I frame my work, where I was transfer student facing, and now I get to really create policy and impact the culture of the institutions I work with. So that kind of tells you where I am and kind of my motivations on what I do. It's exciting work. I love that every transfer experience is so unique. So big fan of transfers.
Well, thank you for sharing the personal aspect of it too. As a fellow transfer student, the transfer identity is strong. And I think that sometimes when people have lived through the experience, it does bring a richness to the work that we do.
Sure.
So thank you for sharing your perspective. I didn't know that about you. I knew you were a transfer student, but I didn't know that that's how you connected to the experience.
Absolutely, and I have 2 and 3/4 associate degrees. I have an internship left for my third associate degree, and they won't count this as an internship.
Oh, come on now.
Like, fine, I'll do an internship.
That is a right. Well, it took me 20 years to get my bachelor's, so I think, and my associates, so I think you're good. You've got time.
Okay, cool.
There's no, it's everyone has their own educational trajectory. It can go
exactly. Oh, yes.
So I would love to hear your thoughts on transfer inclusive curricular review. I know this is some work that you've been really digging into recently, well, probably for a long time, but that you have some kind of new thoughts, ideas on it, and I think it would be really useful for other institutions to have some guideposts on how to even start looking at things with the transfer receptive lens in terms of this topic.
I was lucky to come to an institution like Columbia College Chicago because they had already recognized that some of their policies and practices and procedures were not conducive to transfer student completion. And so I am really happy to share a lot of the work that was done prior and that continues to this day to really truly be inclusive, because we can create admissions policies that are welcoming to transfer students and we can create onboarding programs, but if our curriculum is not conducive for transfer students and for them to be able to complete the program on their time frame and ones that we would also like them to complete on, then there is really a non-starter. So with the curricular review process, it needs to dive really, really, really deep. The first step is really, just like what other people have done, is really look at the concept of what a transfer student is at your institution. How are they viewed? How are they seen? One of my favorite comments from one of my faculty members is that transfer students bring this diversity of voice into the classroom. They haven't been trained all the way through up until this junior year. And that was so wonderful to hear, that they appreciate the skill set that's being brought from the two-year institution. But are we also valuing the courses that students are bringing with them as well? So maybe we like their voice, but are we giving them credit for what they want to do? Part of that first step also is identifying those transfer champions, who around you can help work with curriculum. So working with a registrar's office, the admissions folks, but really into the departments and getting those chairs involved. Because you might need their support moving through for this curricular review. So start to really make a list and check it twice. And and really just, start to talk about, have we looked at this? Have we considered how many credit hours we accept in transfer and how they're applied to the degree and the program of study? So that's a good very first step. Several steps involved with that one for sure.
I love that. So in terms of concrete within that step, actually, just to kind of stay there for a minute, I have found that it's really building awareness of who the transfer community is with that group of people, right? So I think faculty they almost always say, oh, I love the transfer students in my class. Oh, they bring this, they ask questions and but they don't realize how many transfers they have in their class. They're really, many of them aren't transfers. A lot of our faculty just maybe didn't take that educational path. Any tips for how you've built those relationships and how you work through that awareness barrier?
Yeah. Because there's some transfer students that don't want to be identified. I would not recommend a faculty member on the first day of class to come in here and say, oh, here's a transfer student. Let people self-identify. We wouldn't ask for other identities to be shared unless people are comfortable with that. So if the class lists could have transfer listed on there, just to indicate, not to focus on, but just indicate which ones are new to campus, not just new to that course or new to that department or new to that program. Transfers, just to indicate those specifically, is a good idea. But it's that data, and I always want data coupled with the anecdotal evidence. We want to hear really about student individual experiences, but taking that data to say, these are how many students are transferring into your programs. These are the credits they're coming with. Here are their GPAs at the start, after the first semester, after the second semester, and here's their progression. This is how long it takes for them to go forward, at least to get a profile, even though I don't like generalizing the transfer student generally, but just to get a profile of those folks going through. And that way, it can be used to go back to the curricular review process to be able to say, okay, I know that it's taking some students longer to complete our program. Maybe that's because we are not accepting as many credits as they're completing at the 2-year, and we're losing credits as they come forward. And so that's a good place to start before getting into that curricular review. Now I'm going to pause and see if you have any questions, because I'd really like to definitely talk about that curricular review process.
Yeah,
It's involved.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Let's get into it then. So, what, I guess my question would be, I mean, how are you having these relationships or these conversations with the community college to make sure that there's that fluid, because I think that's the biggest thing, right? Even in these great programs that we have, the articulation programs that many states have, there's still this blip that's happening.
There is.
Between the two. So maybe let's go there next.
Yeah. Well, I can't go there just yet, because we have to look at ourselves before we can go out and build those partnerships. And so what happened right before I came to Columbia was folks looking at transfer. There was a transfer subcommittee of the enrollment management group, or a group similar to that, that really wanted every single department to look at every single major and every single specialization or concentration within those majors to piece it out. Really, how many terms is it going to take for a student to complete this program? How many credit hours per semester are they going to need to take to complete that program? Keeping in mind what the maximum credit hours you have before they have to do an overload or some kind of special permission to get more classes, to really identify those gateway courses. What's the course that a student needs to complete in order to get in? And when is that course offered? For example, at our institution, there is a course that's offered spring of the sophomore year. We are on a semester system. Spring of the sophomore year, that is the gateway course for every other course the junior and senior year. But most of our students were transferring the junior year for fall. So it was a whole year before they could really get into specific courses. And if you're coming in with your general education complete, I mean, there's not much to do there. And so getting into that, identifying the gateway courses and the semesters in which they're offered, and then when your students are actually transferring, is so important to do. But getting into that even further, hey, sweetheart, getting into there further is really looking at those courses, but what are the prerequisites? What are the co-requisites? If you have concurrent requisites, things you have to take at the same time, identifying those, are they really necessary? And that's a hard conversation to have with faculty members. Is, yes, I know you want it in this way, but are you trying to force sequencing when it's not needed? That we could really be more explicit of. And then speaking of those prerequisites, are they prerequisites that are visible and not hidden, that are actually required in the major as well, to really dig into it? And if it's a prerequisite that we know of, can they complete it at their 2-year institution? How can we make sure that we are being as inclusive as possible for the students to come in? Transparency is so important. And that all of this analysis that goes through for the departments, all of that analysis will be able to tell folks building these partnerships or wanting to make faculty connections with 2-year institutions, which ones are ready to make those partnerships, which ones need a little bit more work. what further conversations should we have about curricular alignment and development? Definitely not in a way that we're trying to tell faculty how to structure their own programs. Definitely not doing that, for sure. But really just to talk about how things are being aligned and how different this program may be from the two-year institution. Is there a way to align those better? So it's such an important part to bring in the departments, and really at that level, we want to get it to the departments, not just those overseeing the college or the school or the institution, getting it down to the people that know the faculty and know the courses, and that content is so important.
Of course, that makes absolute sense. You have to explore the map, explore kind of, you know, the timeline, match it. And each major is so different, right?
So different. So different.
It's unbelievable. And so making sure that somebody's actually looking at that, thinking about the transfer timeline, whether or not it can be completed in 2 years, whether it's realistic, and then actually going, okay, what can be completed at the 2-year level. I love that there's so many little things like that. Some, you know, offering a course sophomore year, and you're like, well, but nobody comes in till junior year. So what do you, I mean, at least, you know, in certain institutions, usually transfer in
Right.
per year.
Right. And then being able to describe that to the partner institution, to be able to say, okay,
Here's what
this program, because of the structure, and it's highly sequenced and it's accredited by an outside institution, we really need them to transfer in the spring semester. And then to be able to work on, in part of that partnership, reverse transferring of credit back to this two-year institution so that that associate degree can be awarded since they are leaving maybe a semester early. How can we build that in automatically and make sure that the goal of the 2-year of whatever that is, if it's transferring the student on without an associate degree, but it's usually the awarding of a credential, getting that done and then following up with them on that for sure. Yeah. And at this institution, because we're an arts and media focused institution, creative folks everywhere, a lot of our courses require placement, auditions, and so to really look at those and see what can we do to be accepting of the credit that someone has earned elsewhere. Like if someone's been taking 4 semesters of dance, they took dance all the way since they were 4 years old, not me, but other people. How are we acknowledging that credit and placing them appropriately as early as possible so the student knows before they commit to the institution to say, okay, I am being placed in this level of ballet or this level of hip hop or wherever they are, to be able to provide that information as early as possible.
Are you able to do that? I mean, I know that a lot of institutions, some can kind of give students a sense of that before enrollment or before admittance or before registration, but some can't. Are you able to have those conversations, or are you working on that plan?
We're still working on that plan. Several of our departments have embraced early placement. One of our music, for example, is doing that. This is actually the first fall semester that we're admitting directly to our Bachelor's of Fine Arts, Bachelor's of Music programs. And they did require auditions prior to being admitted. And we're using those for placement. So it's just thinking about those, maybe offering, I mean, we're all on Zoom these days, offering Zoom placement for our American Sign Language English interpretation. So folks will know exactly where they place before they can make that decision. And these are things the faculty want to do. And it's just, I'm gonna say it may have taken this new situation that we've all found ourselves in to say, oh, there's so much that we can do to approach this creatively. It's a day already. Happy birthday, me.
It's your
So
birthday. You can say it any way
do
you
whatever I want.
want.
I can say anything I want. But it's just really just to think about things in a different way and how we can support the students coming forward. And that would be a freshman or a transfer, but transfer is my jam. So that's what I think about.
I love that they're being innovative. And I was actually, one question I had for you was sort of how is this shifting now that we're in this remote reality, or is it shifting, or is it accelerating it even? I think I've said a couple of times, and you were just pointing out, I do think that this is giving us an opportunity for accessibility, for innovative ways of approaching things in ways we just didn't before, because of necessity, but it sort of forced us into the 21st century in a lot of ways, which is,
For sure. And because of the institution like we have, where it is hands-on, and we are very focused on how hands-on our curriculum is. Your first semester, you're touching a camera. You're going to get into the filmmaking studio. You're going to be building that set. You're going to be doing these things. How can we do that remotely? How can we do that remotely? Especially when being an institution that brings folks from all over the world, making sure they have the tools, and literally the tools, the hammers, the nails, the sewing machines for our fashion studies program, to make sure that they have access to all of that. So the faculty right now are thinking about all of these different ways that the learning outcomes of the courses can be reached, and really identifying, again, which of those are the most important ones. We want every student to be successful when they come in, whether they're transferring or whether they're moving on to the next semester after they've been learning remotely at the end of the spring. How do we do that? And faculty are really taking the time right now. They took the time before, they're continuing it, but they're really taking the time to figure out, how can we do this? Because we need to. So how can we do this?
I love that they're looking at it through that super student-friendly lens, and but specifically with the transfer review and the transfer kind of perception of how we're looking at how things articulate. The idea that they are actually exploring what's going to be best for the student. I think sometimes we get in this thing of like, this is the set, this is the map that's going to work for our institution. That's it. And instead of with transfers, like you said, it's individualized. Everybody's got a different background. Everybody's got a different experience and a different story that they're bringing to the university, and valuing that is great. Okay, so you got to get your stakeholders, you got to get your folks on board who you're going to need on the line. You're doing reviews of everything, of the majors, the minors, the requirements. You're communicating with the community colleges to say, here's our deal. What how can we do this? How can we work together? How can we do it out? What other elements are we looking at in that arc?
Then it's also with community colleges in the state of Illinois, there's a transfer coordinator at every community college. And we do have, much like other states, a general education core curriculum that is transferable to all of our public institutions. We're a private institution, and so we opted into that because we do want to ensure that we are as transfer friendly as possible. But really, really what we get down to is making those faculty connections, because that is important for everyone. First off, it could be that the faculty at the two-year institution gets to know the program at my institution or another person's institution, to be able to say, yes, you should really think about that program, maybe this other one, but these are the differences. Because if your faculty know each other, they can have those conversations. Then they can actually, if something were to be missing, let's say we did an analysis of student grades after their first semester, start to notice that students in this one class from this one transfer institution, they didn't do well. They performed significantly different than other students, maybe other community college transfer students. that would be an opportunity if there's those connections and that true partnership to be able to say, hi, faculty member that I'm friends with, this is what we've seen. This is what is happening. It seems like they're missing this little piece. So many faculty at our partner institutions are like, oh, great. Can see about adding that in right in this place, or they get it in this class later. Maybe I can bring that faculty member in there and we can all talk about it, because the success and completion is important for every single person that's involved in the transfer process. And so having those partnerships and honoring our agreements and how we're accepting courses in, and knowing that we have done an analysis and other people can do analyses of the majors to know which ones are transfer inclusive and friendly, it shows really do care. It's not performing as if we care.
Right.
It's actually doing the work, for
Right.
sure.
I want to dig in a little bit into that faculty-faculty relationship, because I'm wondering what structures do you have in place? You said there's a community college transfer coordinator. Is does sort of everything happen through that individual? Because I'm wondering, how are these, I'm even thinking about our own institution. I'm like, I mean, maybe faculty know faculty know community college, but I don't actually know if they're having those conversations. So
Yeah.
what structures are in place, if any, or what do you think would work?
So in the state of Illinois, of course, everything's different at every single one. So some of the transfer coordinators just want to know at the end, just like, are you working on agreements? Just copy me. Great, fine. Other ones want to be involved and help coordinate and be a liaison, similar to my role, is to help me and my faculty to be able to know other faculty. But I got to give props where props are due. I got to give it up to App State. Appalachian State, they have done amazing work on faculty to faculty collaboration, doing a scan of their own institution and taking their people out to their partner institutions. And that I have to give it up, because that is where I learned about it the first time, even before I got into this role. I go about making these faculty connections differently, of course. It depends on the institution, depends on the faculty I want to work with. Sometimes for my art faculty, that's a very close-knit group. And so to be able to say, hi, chair of art and art history, who do you know at the community colleges? Whose work do you know? Who did you go to school with? You know, what kind of ends do we have already that we can reach out and do that? If it is a discipline that is not as connected as something like art, it is really just me reaching out and saying, let's chat, and then meeting with them first, and then saying, this next meeting, I would love for you to meet so-and-so. They're doing something very similar to the research you've done or the interests you have, and then finding that connection and then bringing them together. I'm hoping to have, very similar to Appalachian State, a transfer summit. I had a small one this past October, but just to bring faculty and the transfer coordinators together to really talk about transfer, specifically and generally. I would love to partner with other four-year institutions in the Chicagoland area. There's over 100. Let's do it all. We are all in this together. Let's all talk about transfer and how it's different and how we can support people together. But it's really just connections, and it's those partnerships, not those partnerships that are just dusty on a shelf that someone created and people have forgotten about. No, make it real, make it alive. So that's what I'm trying to do and what we will do.
You're doing it. I think now we have another episode. Clearly, I got to call Kim and everybody over at App and be like, what are you doing? What's your faculty communication plan? And then we can maybe we can even have a group conversation about that at some point.
Yeah, I'll get all fangirly because they do great stuff.
They do. They really do. I agree. Well, this has been fascinating. I feel like I'm learning a lot about, because every state is so different, and it's so cool to me to see the innovative stuff that's happening all around the nation. So I appreciate you sharing. Is there any other last sort of tidbits or tips or nuts and bolts type things you would share in terms of what you're working on or what you want to work on next?
Oh, there's so much I want to do. We're working, I'm pitching soon. We've started to develop guaranteed admission agreements, which is new to this institution specifically, not new to other institutions at all, but tying those with scholarships and additional supports of pre and post admissions advising. So working on that. But what's even more exciting, working on a concurrent enrollment program where students would be enrolled between the community college and the 4-year at the same time. Big fan of that. That's something I did at my previous institution. I hope to do that at Columbia. Because of this unknown time that we're in right now and not sure how institutions are really 4-year institutions, what their enrollment rates are going to look like, and at the 2-year, are they going to have the capacity and the funding if there's an influx? Just trying to think of ways that we can partner and help our folks in the Chicagoland area, at least, maybe take online courses with Columbia or something that's different than anything they could ever take at the other institution, just to help a little bit more. And so those are some things that I'm working on right now, generally.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you for being with us. Thank you for sharing your expertise and energy and wonderfulness. Maybe let's end with one word or sentence that describes either your transfer experience as a transfer or the transfer community to you.
This is so important because this is going to be on the internet and I need to pick the right word. But for me, it was transformational. So I want to say transformational because every experience changes a person. And so anything we can do to support people in their transformation, I'm down. I'm here to do it.
I love it. I'm down too. That's perfect. Thank you so much, Dr. Herrera. I so appreciate it. It was really
Thank you for having me.
time with you.